Hi everyone, it's Katie from Chords Records. Welcome to my channel. What an eclectic group of albums I've added to my collection just in the last few weeks. I want to take you through them. Some really special jazz albums to start with. Before I get going, could I ask you to like this video, please? Subscribe to my channel, it all helps. I really appreciate it. Right, let's get going. Right, the first beautiful album that I want to share with you is his debut album on Prestige by Coltrane. This is the first Japanese reissue. The original one came out in 1957. This one is the first Japanese reissue in 1971, 72, I think. They reproduced the Prestige label. It's in mono. You can, I don't know if you can see how beautiful that is, but what a pickup. I'm so happy. And I was playing it yesterday and I'd forgotten what that early Coltrane is like. Oh my goodness, the players on this. We've got Paul Chambers on bass, Red Garland on piano, Al Heath on drums. That's pretty much it, but there's Mal Waldron on piano on one of the songs. Actually, side 2 has mainly Mal Waldron, and then on side 1 you've got Red Garland. Absolutely stunning. His debut album as a band leader. Beautiful album, and a beautiful version of this from Japan. Didn't come with the Obi strip, but very happy to have picked that up. And the other kind of, I guess, jazz heavy hitter is Nina Simone. Her debut album from 1959, The Australian Press. This is the first Australian press from 1959. Jazz as played in an exclusive side street club. And of course, both these albums have been recently reissued on the various sort of high fidelity labels, Analog Productions, etc. But I played this Nina Simone the other day. If you follow me on Instagram, quick reminder, I have an Instagram, Chords Records. Please follow me. I share a lot of the music I'm playing, and I played this the other day for the first time when I got it home. I hadn't even cleaned it, and it was warm and rich and full. It was a little bit dirty, but nothing that a good clean won't fix. And I was so thrilled. Not a scratch, not a pop, not a click, not a jump. It was just beautiful. And there you have it, an Australian original of Nina Simone's first album, her debut album. Very, very lucky, 1959. And then just keeping to the Nina Simone theme, I am as part of one of my many sub collections. I've got all these little kind of genres, and I'll talk about that later on. One of them is collecting albums at Newport or Newport Live throughout the years from the late 50s through to now. Newport, whether it's the Newport Jazz Festival, the Newport Folk Festival, over the years, artists and the actual festival itself has put out many, many albums. And just as I come across them in the wild, I pick them up. They're just such a really fantastic timestamp of a moment. And this one, Nina at Newport, this was the Australian press. It's a kind of a cheapy kind of series they put out in Australia called the Gold Star series on Astor. And they're hit and miss, but this one's a hit. Sounds beautiful. The original had a different cover, but this was the kind of Australian and later covers. But it's still a great cover. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That's the track list there. And it's just swinging. And it's from 1960 or around about the time of her debut in 1959. And she performed at Newport in 1960, the Newport Jazz Festival. And that's the Astor label that it's on. So that's just a nice addition to my Newport collection. even though it's kind of that Gold Star series, still very happy to have it. I'm not kind of sort of religious about getting the first presses of them. I just want to kind of collect them all gradually over the years. Australian and New Zealand music. If you've been watching my channel, you know I am wanting to start featuring in every video I can Antipodean sounds, so music that comes from either Australian or New Zealand bands. And part of my 2026 resolution in music is that I am trying to learn about early New Zealand and Australian rock. Sort of late 60s, early 70s. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day, shout out to Peter, who was reminding me that the Americans were all over this stuff, and now they're sweeping up all our records from this time, and there are huge collectors in America that are collecting these albums from the late 60s and early 70s Australian rock, and it's hard, they're getting really hard to get here, and they're hundreds of dollars. But I'm more than that, trying to educate myself on this genre, and pop in the comments if you're an expert. Love to catch up with you if you're around in the Sydney region. So I've picked up a few from Peter Wright from Mobile Fog recently, and he knows about this stuff and has been selling albums for a long time, and he sort of gave me a really good compilation to kick off with. And of course I know the kind of the pop rock bands of the era, whether it's Ted Mulry Gang or Sherbet or Little River Band even, which was a bit soft, but it's more that kind of heavy rock, psych rock, blues rock that I'm really not familiar with. And he shared with me this fantastic compilation album which I bought, called 12 by 12, and it was on the Infinity label. If you know the Infinity label, so Festival Records in Australia created this sub-label Infinity, which featured a lot of these bands at the time. It's kind of a pink label with the Infinity sign, and so a lot of the Sherbet albums, etc., are on that album. But they put out this compilation called 12 by 12 in 1972, and featuring a lot of the blues rock artists at the time. And you can see there Black Feather, which is the most beautiful song that kicks off this album, called Find Someone to Love. It's almost folk rock in its kind of thematic or genre, I guess. And then Copper Wine, which was led for a long time by Jeff St. John, who had spina bifida and was in a wheelchair, but he was an amazing vocalist. And Wendy Saddington, a famous, really great blues, Australian blues and jazz singer who also joined Copper Wine for a while. Chain, Ends It, Stafford Bridge, amazing. Billy Thorpe, of course, from Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. Sherbet's on there, but an early version of Sherbet. Phil Manning. So a bunch of amazing kind of blues rock, folk blues rock. It's a sampler essentially, and it was suggested I get this and go, have a good listen to it and see what you like. And I tell you what, I love them all. So I'm on a mission to start really understanding and listening to a lot of this music. So I'm very familiar, when I go to festivals and when I go to record fairs, that I know what I'm looking at. So that was a really good pickup. And then I found this one, which is Total Union Band of Light, which is from 72 or 73 as well. And this was definitely a blues rock, Australian blues rock. It was on Warner Brothers, the Warner Brothers label there. And it featured actually one of Australia's great slide guitarists, I've been told. His name was Norman Rue, and he played bottleneck slide guitar. Phil Key was the vocalist on here. And Phil Key originally was in the New Zealand band the La Di Da's, if you know them, and they came over and formed this band, Band of Light, and this debut album by them, Total Union. It was part Kiwi, part Australian, very blues rock. I'll open it up so you can see look at them in their kind of just a very small stage performing live there. What's interesting about this album is that Phil Keys and his wife, who wrote under a pseudonym, they did most of the lyric writing, and it was very sort of social or political. Lots about racism, the environment, and in fact, this is a very short album. The songs are very long. There's only like 6 songs on the album. The second song is called Free Them From Hunger. And the first 2 lines, why does it have to be so? There's not enough food to grow to feed those hungry children. Why is it for us and not for them? And so there's very much these themes of social good. And the story goes that the band members, after not long after this, several band members left because they just wanted to sing about rock and roll and love and drinking beer. And these guys were very politically active, which I really like about them. All right. And then another incredible find, the Bitches. So I can't open this because it's sealed, and I'm not sure if I'm going to open it. If you know the New Zealand band The Cleaves or Cleaves, from New Zealand, from the 60s, essentially, they started in 1964. Gay Brown and her 2 brothers, Ron and Graham, and another member who I can't quite recall his name, and they were quite successful, and it was very psych rock, and they took a boat to UK in 1970 or 1971 and reinvented themselves as Bitch. And this album is fantastic. So Gay Brown and her brothers share the vocals. And if you look up the original band from 1964, they look nothing like this. Very conservative, and this is what they turned into. And this album is super, super interesting. So it's quite rare, and that's why I've kept it sealed for now. I think I probably will open it. But it's a New Zealand only issue from 2015 from Record Store Day. So over 10 years ago, one of the first Record Store Days. And it was an album New Zealand owned by the Auckland record shop Real Groovy. And some of you will know I used to live in Auckland for over a decade, and in the 80s. And I know that shop has been around forever. And I know that shop, and they've obviously started a record label, and there it is. And they found the original tapes of this, and they issued, never before on vinyl, never released, and they issued this album, Bitch, one time only, New Zealand only, and it is impossibly hard to get. And yeah, it was a shelved album at the time from 1971. You can stream it on Spotify. Go stream it on Spotify. It is amazing. So I'm very happy to have this in my collection. Yet to be decided whether I open it. Still sealed. I'll read you the hype sticker. In 1971, the Cleaves released one of Australia's hottest prog psych albums following a move to the UK, a name change to Bitch, and a deal with Warner Brothers. They completed their follow-up in 1973. Shelved due to label upheavals, that's incredible slice of gritty glam goddess, goodness, probably goddess as well, goodness, has remained unreleased until now. Bitch. Right, hope YouTube doesn't slam me for saying that so many times. Right, now we're still staying with New Zealand, but something a little bit unusual. I collect soundtracks, and I've been aware of this New Zealand label called Noah Records for a little while. It's out of New Zealand. They release, usually on Bandcamp, very limited releases. And this is a beautiful soundtrack from a series about Pacifica community in a kind of city, Auckland, called Grey Lynn, and there was a series on TVNZ called Still Here, and this is series 2 soundtrack recorded in someone's house. I'm not super familiar with the artists. I'm sure New Zealanders or maybe Pacific Islanders might be, but it is so beautiful, and it's almost world music. There's Hawaiian steel guitar on here, which is just beautiful. But it's almost, there's sort of a kind of an islander electronic percussion kind of vibe to it. Really beautiful and really beautifully recorded. I think this is limited to 150. Yeah, and I got number 57, Still Here, on Noah Records. Right, moving away from the Antipodean sounds, a few other albums I've picked up recently. This very, very random, almost a library record in some ways, called Give Me Some Lovin' by The Projection Company. So who were The Projection Company? The Projection Company were a faceless, nameless bunch of musicians in the late 60s who did these kind of really weird psych cover versions of famous songs, not the least of which was Give Me Some Lovin'. That is the best song on this album, and it's almost true to the original Spencer Davis Group, but it's got lots of fuzz guitar on here, and it's really fun. It's the sort of thing you'd put on late night as a party was really getting going, and there was quite a bit of drinking maybe, or some other stuff. But the reason I bought it was this very hilarious, almost a piss take of what it was, how it was made. So it's on a label, a random label called Custom Records. And it says here, technical data. This disc was recorded on an Ampex stereo tape recorder from 10 CPS bottom to 30,000 CPS top, transferred to disc with Newman lathe plus a Teldec cutting head, and utilizes the standard RIAA playback curve. The disc was pressed from the finest virgin vinyl in a process that removes surface noise and distortion, etc., etc. It just goes on, and it's I just don't know if they're serious when they're talking about this. If anyone knows about this album or who they are or what's the go, I would love to know. Let me know in the comments. But I just saw it and it just intrigued me, and so I picked it up, and it's a really fun listen. Right, I was thrilled to get this. I have the first volume, and it's Ray Charles' Modern Sounds in Country and Western Music. I have the first one, which is a classic Ray Charles album. I've got the mono and the stereo. And I saw this volume 2, which I've never seen before, and picked it up. And it's the stereo version. It's the Australian press. And it is fantastic. And it's got on here one of the best versions of You Are My Sunshine you will ever hear. Oh my God, this guy was a master. And this was on what they call the Universal Record Club. As I said, it was an Australian club record, really. Nothing too special, but just really kind of adding to my kind of Ray Charles collection, if you like. I'm not sort of a purist when it comes to him, but because I have the volume 1, I thought I'd get the volume 2. All right, and then I'm so happy to have got this as well, and this is Eno, the very famous album Here Come the Warm Jets, which is not what you think. Apparently it is. The sound of the guitar apparently, that was being played on here, he has said this is an intriguing album. And so it's after Roxy Music, and this was, I think, his maybe the first album he released after he left that. And so it's quite eclectic, but it's still got a kind of a common thread through it. It's very playing around with instruments and the sounds, and apparently he tried to get a whole bunch of different types of musicians together and mash them together and see what would happen, like in a classic Brian Eno experiment. And it is a soundscape of music, but it's still got a through line of great pop music. So there's echoes of Roxy music in here, and it's a absolutely brilliant album, with a very slightly controversial playing card on there. And I saw it, and I really like Brian Eno, and I think he's a really intelligent artist and man, and I didn't have a copy of this. It's probably not one I'll play a lot, but it was one that I wanted in my collection. I'm trying to just, in my collection, have some heavy hitters that, probably should be in every collection. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I really, really liked this album, wanted to get it, got it. Fascinating artist. Okay, a new release for me, Mumford & Sons Prize Fighter. This is their second album after their comeback album Rushmere last year. They'd had a gap for 6 or 10 years or something since their last albums, and this is, I think, their 6th album as a band, and it was made straight after Rushmere, literally almost overlapped. They were in the studio at the same time, and it is, in my opinion, I much prefer it than Rushmere. It's really beautiful, and it's got some fantastic guest stars on here. The first track kicks off with a duet with Chris Stapleton. The second one's a duet with Hosier. There's Gigi Perez is on here. Gracie Abrams is on here. So it's made with a kind of a collective of people who've known each other for years, from Aaron Dessner, Justin Vernon, and these guys have travelled together. They've known each other for 10, 20 years, but they've never kind of put their stamp down on a piece of wax before and thought, yeah, let's actually do this together. And so they're the producers of it. So Justin Vernon, Aaron Dessner is very much involved in the sound of this album, if you know that vibe. And it is just beautiful. The songs are great. And I'm so happy to have got this. And I think, as I said, it's much better than Rushmere. It was released this week. Highly recommend you giving it a stream if you're kind of into that kind of British kind of folk, pop, Americana type music. I know they were much maligned back in the day, but I just think they're fantastic. And, they're funny guys. Love them. All right, the final 3 are just a bit of fun. As I was saying earlier in the video, I have all these kind of little sub-genres of things I collect. One of the things I collect are soundtracks. Doesn't everybody? I love soundtracks, but I particularly love 80s soundtracks. I've got a lot of 80s. That's a subgenre. Another subgenre of soundtracks I have is space soundtracks. So I love the 70s and 80s science fiction films. Actually, there's a couple of 60s ones as well. The covers are beautiful. Some of the music is really great, but it's more the concept around those particular soundtrack albums. And then the subgenre of that is Star Trek. I am all in on Star Trek. I absolutely love Star Trek. I love every iteration of Star Trek. And if I see a Star Trek soundtrack in the wild, I will get it. And a few I've picked up recently, and I'm sure you're all tuning off now, but, move on if you're not interested, is this beautiful cover. I love this blueprint. This is called Inside Star Trek. It's really random. It's got some William Shatner meets Captain Kirk. It's kind of got music, but it's more narration, and it's by Gene Roddenberry, who is obviously the inventor of Star Trek. It's a very odd album, but absolutely love it, from the 70s. And then I picked up this recently. This is a kind of a slightly more unusual. This is a repress of something that came out in the 60s, but this one came out in the 80s. This was the reissue in the 80s. Leonard Nimoy presents Mr. Spock's Music from Outer Space. And it literally is the theme from Star Trek. Very much soundtrack-based space music. First came out in the 60s when Star Trek was around. And then another one, this is Star Trek Volume 2, and this is digital, unfortunately. But I mean, I shouldn't say unfortunately, because it actually sounds beautiful, and it's symphonic, Royal Philharmonic Orchestra symphonic suites arranged from the original television scores. So they've kind of reproduced it, and it's beautiful to listen to. It is very symphonic, soundscapey, with echoes of Star Trek in there. There's only 4 tracks on here. It's beautiful. The 4 tracks: Conscious of the King, Spectre of the Gun, The Enemy Within, and I, Mud. Really beautiful. So there are a few Star Trek ones I've recently acquired. That's it. A long video. New additions to my collection. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.